Imagine someone trapped in a cycle, fighting the same battle every day. They wake up determined to change, but by the end of the day, they've given in to the same temptations: lust, pornography, drinking. It's a cycle they desperately want to break, but it feels like the more they fight, the more they lose. That's because it happens to so many of us. Miyamoto Musashi, the greatest swordsman Japan ever saw, wasn't born with iron discipline. He struggled too, facing battles that went beyond the sword. But he discovered a way to conquer his mind, not just his enemies. In this video, you'll learn how Musashi's method helped not only him, but also someone else who struggled with addiction, and how it can help you finally break free from your own cycle. Part 1. The power of mastering your mind. Musashi wasn't always the disciplined, unstoppable force he's remembered as. Early in his life, he struggled with control, both over his emotions and his impulses. Like many of us, he found himself reacting to life instead of mastering it. But over time, Musashi discovered something crucial. True mastery doesn't start with the sword in your hand. It starts with the mind. He realized that the real battle wasn't external, it was internal. His greatest enemy wasn't out there, it was inside him. Once Musashi understood this, everything changed. He began to train his mind, controlling his thoughts, managing his impulses, and developing a mental discipline that allowed him to overcome any obstacle. Now think about someone else who was trapped in a different kind of battle, a person caught in the grip of addiction. This person knew they had a problem, but like Musashi, they were focused on the external battle. They tried to quit over and over again, but kept failing because they didn't realize that the real fight was happening in their mind. It wasn't just about resisting physical urges. It was about retraining the way they thought, the way they reacted to stress, boredom, and temptation. Both Musashi and this individual discovered that the first step toward victory wasn't conquering the addiction itself. It was learning to master their thoughts. This person started small, just like Musashi. They began by noticing their thoughts, recognizing when the cravings hit, and slowly, they started to control their mind instead of letting it control them. Mastering the mind is the foundation of overcoming addiction. Whether it's lust, drinking, or any other vice, the first victory isn't a big one. It's those small mental wins. It's recognizing a thought, controlling it, and moving forward without letting it dictate your actions. For both Musashi and this person, those small victories became the stepping stones to conquering their greatest battles. Part 2. Recognizing the root of addiction. Musashi's success on the battlefield didn't come just from his skill with the sword. It came from his deep self-awareness. He wasn't just fighting his opponents, he was constantly observing himself. In combat, he would analyze his own movements, thoughts, and emotions, knowing that self-awareness was the key to defeating any enemy. The same method applies when facing addiction. Addiction, in any form, is a battle that can't be won if you don't understand the enemy. And the enemy isn't just the addiction itself, it's what's driving it. Musashi would say that before you defeat an opponent, you have to know them inside and out. When it comes to addiction, that means recognizing the root of your cravings. What's triggering them? Is it stress? Boredom? A way to escape from something you don't want to face? Let's go back to the person struggling with addiction. For a long time, they thought the addiction itself was the problem. But the real issue wasn't the act of giving in. It was the underlying triggers that pushed them there. Over time, they began to notice a pattern. The cravings hit hardest after a long day of stress or when they were bored. Maybe certain situations or feelings of loneliness made the temptation almost unbearable. Once they became aware of their triggers, everything started to shift. Just like Musashi would analyze his enemy's moves before striking, they began to observe their thoughts and patterns. Recognizing the root of the addiction gave them the power to start addressing it. The key lesson here from Musashi is that you can't defeat what you don't understand. To break free from addiction, you need to recognize what fuels it. Self-awareness, like Musashi's in combat, is the first step toward gaining control and weakening the grip of addiction. Know your triggers and you'll start to regain power over them. Part 3. developing self-discipline and routine. Musashi's life was built on discipline. Day in and day out, he followed a strict routine that kept his mind sharp and his body strong. He knew that without a structured life, distractions would creep in and weaken his focus. Every morning he practiced, honed his skills, and trained his mind. For Musashi, self-discipline wasn't just a practice. It was a way of life, a relentless pursuit of mastery. This concept of discipline and routine is crucial for overcoming addiction. Just like Musashi, who structured his life around eliminating distractions, someone battling addiction must do the same. It's not just about avoiding the temptation to give in. It's about building a daily routine that leaves no room for those habits to slip back in. Think of the person struggling with addiction. They began to build a routine that was anchored in discipline, just like Musashi's. They started their day with purpose, getting up early, exercising, and dedicating time to something productive. By creating structure, they eliminated the chaotic gaps in their day where addiction used to thrive. Instead of reacting to cravings, they trained their mind to focus on other pursuits, replacing addictive behaviors with habits that supported their mental and physical health. The key here is consistency. It's not just about avoiding bad habits, but actively creating positive ones. Every day, this person reinforced their discipline by sticking to a routine that gave them control over their time and energy. Over time, these new habits began to strengthen their resolve. Much like Musashi's relentless training made him stronger both mentally and physically. Musashi's philosophy teaches us that mastery is achieved through constant improvement. The individual battling addiction learned this firsthand. Discipline and routine weren't just about staying away from their addiction. They were about creating a foundation for a better life, building habits that led to long-term growth and resilience. When you focus on structure and discipline, you gain control not just over addiction, but over your entire life. Part 4. Facing and embracing discomfort. Musashi's believed that the only way to build true resilience was to put himself in uncomfortable, even painful situations. He would deliberately embrace discomfort, whether through intense training or by living in isolation. For Musashi, comfort was the enemy of growth. It was in the discomfort that he found his greatest strength. Basically, he was David Goggins way before David Goggins was even a thing. This idea of embracing discomfort is critical when overcoming addiction. The person struggling with addiction realized that avoiding the cravings and discomfort only made them stronger over time. Instead of running from the urges, they began to lean into them, facing their discomfort head on. They realized that the discomfort wasn't something to be feared. It was something to be embraced. It became a signal that they were on the path to overcoming their addiction. Much like Musashi in his training, this person started to understand that each moment of discomfort was an opportunity to build resilience. The cravings, the urges, the restless energy, rather than avoiding them or giving in, they sat with the discomfort. They began to see it as a test of their mental strength, a way to train their mind to withstand the temptation. Over time, just as Musashi's body and mind grew stronger through the challenges he faced, this individual found that the more they leaned into discomfort, the weaker the addiction's grip became. Each time they embraced the discomfort instead of running from it, they took away some of the addiction's power. The mind, like a muscle, grows stronger through resistance. Musashi's philosophy teaches us that real strength doesn't come from staying comfortable. It comes from facing what's hard and pushing through it. For someone battling addiction, leaning into discomfort isn't easy, but it's the path to true freedom. Part 5. The role of solitude and reflection. Musashi understood the power of solitude. For him, time alone wasn't a luxury. It was essential for clarity and growth. He would retreat into isolation to reflect on his battles, both internal and external, using that quiet space to sharpen his mind and strategize his next moves. In solitude, Musashi found not just peace, but insight. Away from distractions, he could focus deeply on his thoughts and refine his approach to life. For someone battling addiction, solitude plays a similar role. The individual realized that constantly being surrounded by distractions, noise, and external pressures only made it harder to focus on their healing. So they began to carve out moments of solitude. not as a way to escape, but as a way to process their thoughts and emotions. It was in these quiet moments that they could face their deepest pain and start to untangle the emotions tied to their addiction. Reflection in solitude gave them the space to address emotional wounds that had been ignored for so long. It allowed them to strategize, much like Musashi did, not just for the next day, but for their overall journey toward healing. The person started to see that solitude wasn't loneliness. It was a necessary part of recovery. In the quiet, they could reflect on what was working and what needed to change, gaining clarity about the root causes of their addiction and the emotional pain that fueled it. Musashi's philosophy reminds us that growth often happens in the quietest moments. It's through self-reflection that we gain the insights necessary to overcome our struggles. For someone overcoming addiction, solitude becomes a powerful tool, a time to regroup, reassess, and plan the next step forward. By dedicating time to quiet reflection, you allow deeper growth to happen. It's in these moments of solitude that you find the strength to continue your journey, learning more about yourself and your path to recovery. Part 6. The final challenge, mastering the moment. Musashi believed that every battle, no matter how large, was fought in the present moment. He lived by the principle of being present, fully focused on the task at hand. For him, distractions were dangerous, and hesitation was defeat. Musashi knew that victory didn't come from dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, but from mastering the present moment, from being completely absorbed in what he was doing right now. For the person recovering from addiction, mastering the moment became their greatest challenge and ultimately their greatest tool for overcoming their cravings. They learned that temptation often struck when their mind wandered, when they were thinking about past failures or worrying about future challenges. But by practicing mindfulness, they trained themselves to stay grounded in the present. When cravings hit, they didn't react automatically. Instead, they used mindfulness to pause, breathe, and bring their focus back to the moment. Just like Musashi, you too can break free from your own struggles, whether it's addiction, bad habits, or mental barriers. Musashi's path to mastery was about conquering the mind, recognizing the roots of his challenges, developing discipline, and most importantly, mastering the present moment. It wasn't about perfection. It was about progress, one small victory at a time. Take that first step today, and remember, it's the mastery of the moment that will lead you to victory. Subscribe for more insights on how to apply timeless wisdom to modern struggles.